no parent looks at their daughter and goes, oh yeah, she's like not that good. She's kind of dumb. Like no one says that, right? We are our own children's biggest cheerleader and champion. Yet parents are twice as likely, if they are the parents of boys, to Google if their child is gifted. That's astounding. So what that tells me is there's a systemic belief that we have so ingrained into society and norms that we are pushing this narrative to the next generation without even meaning to, without even knowing that we're doing it, because it's just so pervasive.
Welcome to another episode of The Rooted Founder. My guest today is Veena, Jetti, and I am so shocked we have not met in person or been introduced any sooner than this, because we have so many friends in the real estate investing space, and she's amazing. She's an entrepreneur, a storyteller, a mom, a wife, a community leader, and because we recognize people based on achievement, although that is not all of who she is, I will say she's achieved a lot. She has bought and sold over $1 billion in multifamily assets. And she is just on a crusade right now to help more women own more real estate. And I was recently at an investor conference with Kim Kiyosaki and some other female players in the real estate investing space. And something that was a theme for that event was nothing bad happens when women own more money. And I'm curious, Veena, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I could not agree more with this. So, there's the statistic that 31% of investors are women, which means we've made a lot of progress, but there's so much more left to do. And I was reading like a blog article or something like that. And this is 2 weeks ago. Do you know that women could not have their own credit card without their husband's name on it until the 70s?
I know. I was shocked when I learned that.
Like, I was born in the 80s. Like, my parents were like married and here in this country, and my mom's a successful real estate investor. And she couldn't have her own credit card without my dad on it. That's insane. So when you think about 31% of women being investors, that's a lot of progress in a short amount of time, right? Like in 45, 50 years, but there's so much more left to do, right? And I always get the same negative feedback. I'm curious if you get this too, but like I'll get people go, but what about men? Like they are useful and they can help and they do amazing things too. Like it's not right to just ask women to step up. And I go, yes, they are. Like I have had so many of my male colleagues, my white male colleagues that have uplifted me and held space for me and supported me and invested in me and believed in me. Like so many. A lot of what I do today, if I had to turn it back to like one or two pivotal moments, they've always been white men. But that was just a catalyst for change because those men are great men and realize that women have something to offer. And for me, I have 2 daughters. And so I have twin 5-year-olds, and I want them to go out into the world when they're, done with college and they're ready to go out and make their own way. I don't want it to be remarkable what you or I have done. I want it to be like, yeah, of course, that's just what people do. And so when we talk about DEI and like diversity and inclusion, it's also really important to have male white voices, but that means that we also need to have women and minorities and people from different socioeconomic educational backgrounds so that we get a full representation of what the possibilities are and what the best courses of action are. So there's a space for everybody. Diversity and inclusion for me doesn't mean we only have women's voices. It means that we are equally represented as a percentage of the population in boardrooms.
Before we started recording, we were talking about our individual journeys.
Yeah.
And for a long time being the only women at the conference table. And I know that I've had my journey of shying away from having conversations of what it felt like to be the only woman. And then what were some of my personal hurdles to overcome. And I'm sure, the statistic you're saying is we are still a minority. We are still not the loudest voice or an equal voice. And I'm not in a position, or I'm not trying to push a narrative of competition. I actually believe what you believe in, like there's collaboration. And I think that seeing everyone has a different lens on life.
Yeah.
And we are in a battle of ideologies right now. And could we create a conference room or a boardroom or a dinner table where we can have different ideologies? We can look at the concepts, ideas from multiple angles and come to new sacred agreements. And I think there are some hurdles that we're overcoming to get there. And in your experience, what have been some of those hurdles that you've had to overcome?
So I love this question because I think that when you are talking to people who have never experienced it, it's easy to dismiss these experiences because you're like, I would never do that, or that's never happened to me, right? And like we're all guilty of it, myself included. When I'm talking to someone from from no privilege in certain areas, right? I'm like, oh, that doesn't happen, but it does, right? And it's unreasonable. And I've done a lot of education for myself around this. Like, it's unreasonable to dismiss someone else's lived experience. Like, how can I tell you what your lived experience is, and if it's right or wrong? Like, it's factually correct if that's what you're saying, right? What we're really looking to do is shift perspective, right? So, what I think the biggest hurdle that women face in this space is a lack of representation, right? So, last year I spoke on, it was like 110 stages. I spoke on so many stages. And every single time I got off stage, I'd have at least one, if not many, right? Women come up to me and go, oh my gosh, you were my favorite speaker because I didn't think I could do this. I didn't think like mothers could do this. I didn't think people of color could do this. I didn't think women could do this because they just historically don't. But seeing you made me believe that I too can do this. That is why representation is important. It's because when my little girls look to the world, when they see women in power at the highest level, operating companies, starting companies, investing, doing really great, remarkable things, when they go to outer space, right? Like all of these things give my children, my daughters, a message that like, you can do this too. Of course, it requires hard work, dedication, maybe a little bit of luck in some instances, right? Like there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. But if girls don't even believe that they can do it at a young age, they stop trying. And that's where we can talk about like the dream gap, right? So by the time girls are 7 years old, okay, so my daughters are 5, they have 2 more years left. They are discouraged from any kind of STEM. They're more likely to get a doll as a toy, where boys are twice as likely to get an educational toy or a science toy or an engineering toy. Parents of girls are half as likely to Google, is my child gifted, than parents of boys. And that should tell us something. Like, and no parent looks at their daughter and goes, oh yeah, she's like not that good, she's kind of dumb. Like, no one says that, right? Like, we are our own children's biggest cheerleader and champion. Yet parents are twice as likely, if they are the parents of boys, to Google if their child is gifted. That's astounding. And so what that tells me is there's a systemic belief that we have so ingrained into society and norms that we are pushing this narrative to the next generation without even meaning to, without even knowing that we're doing it, because it's just so pervasive. And, I think about it. So my sister has 2 boys, and hers are 6 and 3, and my girls are 5. So they're the bookends of my kids. And I walk around sometimes, like I'll take my nephews out to do something, and then I obviously take my daughters out to do something. And the compliments that my kids get are so different than what my nephews get. My nephews get, wow, you are so strong. You are so brave. You are working really hard. And my daughters get, you're so polite. You're so kind. You're so beautiful. I get comments about their looks more than double compared to what my nephews get. And that's great. They are beautiful and they are polite and they are kind. And I'm proud of them being those things. But that's not the most remarkable or the first thing they should hear. So whenever someone's like, oh, you're so beautiful, I'm like, yeah, and say, thank you. I'm also really smart, or I'm also really kind or brave or hardworking. And I give them another adjective to describe who's here, not just here. And I think like those challenges are like the immediate subtle challenges. And I think those are the hardest to overcome because they're not as egregious as someone saying like, oh, women don't belong in the room. Like, okay, then we can all mostly take issue with that, right? But when you tell a girl that she's not talented or gifted or hardworking or smart or capable, that's a harder stereotype to overcome.
This reminds me, so I'm a Spanish, Filipino, and Italian, and a little bit more mutt stuff. But my grandfather came over from the Philippines when he was 14 years old. Mm-hmm. And then he married my grandmother, and they were at Stanford. And at Stanford, she wanted to do welding. But at the time, she was only allowed to wear a skirt. She wasn't allowed to wear pants. So she had to go into a professor's office, change from her skirt to her pants. And so she was very much pushing this initiative forward of women can do things and they desire to do things. And it's not about taking jobs from men. And it's not about men having to then shift and be women. Like, we have to be able to hold a container where each of us has unique gifts and also challenges that we have to overcome. And we get to have that lived experience of integrating it and feeding the spark inside of us. Mm-hmm. So coming back to this like idea of belief systems. Yeah. And specifically money as a tool. Yeah. It's a tool to create freedom. Right. And I think you and I agree on that. Yes. What were some of the belief systems? And maybe let's talk about it in terms of what you're instilling in your kids, because that is probably where you've grown them a lot in that way. So what were some of the money beliefs that you had growing up that you shifted and are teaching your kids differently?
So interestingly, I think I was given a really solid foundation by my parents because my mom is an investor. She invested in real estate for decades. So my parents didn't really shy away from talking about like investments and savings. You know, I'm the daughter of two immigrants. They came here with $26. They've built their own, self-made millionaires from hard work and investment and taking calculated risk. So I grew up with a lot of that, but my parents laid the foundation and now I'm building on it. So with my kids, I talk about money all day long because when we grew up, like I was born in the 80s. I spent most of my childhood was in like the late 80s, early 90s. And it was really taboo to talk about money, right? Like we don't talk about money. We don't talk about salaries. We don't talk about income. And when we don't discuss money openly, it actually hurts women disproportionately compared to men, because what happens is there's still a pay gap, right? Like that's objectively true. And when we don't discuss salaries, it leaves women out of the discussion of what they should be compensated for appropriately. And so with my girls, I wanted to remove the stigma around talking about money. So I talk about money very openly with them. I explain financial concepts to them. They don't understand them. I've been talking since the day they were born. We've been talking about money. We talk about consent a lot. Like since the day they were born, we talk about these things. And I allow them to express autonomy and emotional intelligence. And so those are differences than like, it was just the way it was when we were raised, right? Like you don't explain to children, you just say that's the way it is and you call it a day. And you don't talk about money because that was like gauche to talk about money and it's taboo. And now my girls, like they can explain what interest is. They can tell you what interest is. And I also am working really hard to make sure they don't develop a fear of public speaking either, because more people are afraid of public speaking than dying, which is crazy to me. Like I would rather give a keynote impromptu in front of 10,000 people than die. But most people would not make that same choice. And I don't want my children to be afraid of that. So even now, when I speak at an event, I try to bring my kids wherever I can. God, they're so bad. They will walk into the room. If they see me on stage with a microphone, they are fearless. They will walk right on that stage. They will take the microphone out of my hands. They will introduce themselves. They'll be like, hi, I'm Jetti, or I'm Veena Jetti, and we're multifamily investors. and then they'll say other things like, Mom, please stop talking for no reason. That's a true story. They said that into a microphone. As I'm like explaining something about like cap rates or something, they're like, Mom, please stop talking for no reason. I'm like, baby, people pay me tens of thousands of dollars to hear me speak, but to them, I'm just mom, I'm not that interesting. So I want them to have those skill sets that allow them to be successful in business, to make sure that when they're in rooms with rich people, that they're not uncomfortable by the conversations that are being had there, that they are like, oh yeah, okay, I know what interest is, I know what debt is, I know what CDOs are. Like, I want them to know all of these terms so that they can hold their own in these rooms, in these conversations, because rich people talk about money. Like, I can't remember the last time I've been at a dinner table with any of my millionaire or billionaire friends and we haven't talked about money at all. We are always talking. We're sharing information. We're sharing knowledge, right? We're talking about what kind of investments we're making, what kind of things are working, what isn't working, who's a really good manager, what strategies we're using. Are there new lenders we should be connected with? Are there new equity partners we need to know? Like, we share all of that information in those rooms. And I want my kids to be in those rooms, and everybody should want their kids to be in those rooms.
I love all of that. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And I think a theme that has been going around a lot is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of how-to tools out there, right? We go to all these seminars, conferences, it's YouTube channels, podcasts, and all these things about this is how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how you invest in real estate. This is how you raise money. This is how you handle investor relations. This is how you do a deal.
Yeah.
And then so many people just don't do it.
Yeah.
And so my question for you is, what role has fear played in your life and how do you manage it?
Oh my gosh, so much. Wow, yeah, no, I'm constantly in fear, right? And it's like what my friend Jen Gottlieb says. She says, you can acknowledge that there's fear. You can't let it drive the car, but it can come in the passenger seat with you. So it's, that saying, right? Like, we can do hard things. We just do it anyway. So if any entrepreneur tells you that they're not afraid of something or they've never been afraid of what they're doing, they're lying, or they're just not very good at what they're doing. There's no great entrepreneur that has become great by not failing at things. And so, like, I do this with my kids every day. I tell them they have 3 goals: learn something because I want them to stay curious. I want them to have a growth mindset. Help someone because I really believe when you are lucky enough to be in the 1%, it's your responsibility to help the 99%. It's like a Warren Buffett mentality, and I very much agree with that. But the third goal I have for them is to fail at something. And it's because I want to remove the fear of failure. I care more that they made the effort and tried something that was too hard for them than I do that they didn't accomplish whatever goal they were trying to accomplish. So in our house, we celebrate failure every day. Every single day I go, what'd you fail at? And then sometimes they'll be like, oh, I didn't fail at anything today. And I'll go, wow, I'm so disappointed in you. I really had hoped you would fail at something today, but tomorrow's a new day and you could try to fail at something tomorrow. And now what they do is they'll come back and they'll go, oh, but mommy, today isn't over yet. I could still fail before the end of the day. I'm like, great job. And then when they come and they tell me that they failed at something and they're like one of my daughters is like, mommy, I've been trying to get across the monkey bars and I haven't been able to do it. And I failed at it again today. And I go, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. You went out there and you failed at the monkey bars. Tell me more about it. And I like make it this big thing. And I do that because I want to, reinforce the idea that trying is what matters. The effort is what matters. It's not about whether you actually cross the monkey bars. I know eventually you'll be able to do it. I want you to try, and I don't want you to be afraid of not being able to do it. And, the same thing goes for when I give them challenges that are too easy, right? Like, so right now, one of my daughters is really into math, right? And so she's like, mommy, I know what 6 plus 6 is. And I'm like, okay, what is it? She'll go 12. I'm like, oh, good job. Yeah. And then she'll go, I know what 600 plus 600 is. I'm like, what? She goes, 1200. And I go, yeah, good job. And then I'm like, hey, these don't seem that challenging. Can I give you a harder one? And she'll be like, okay. And so I'll give her like a harder question or what I think is harder. I'll be like, okay, what's 300 plus 500? And she'll go 800 and answer it like pretty quickly. And I go, yeah, that's right. Good job. But you know what? That was my mistake. That wasn't very challenging for you. Mommy messed up. let me try a different one that's a little bit harder. So then I'll like up the ante until she fails at it. And then when she fails, I'll be like, I'm so proud of you. Look, you just met your goal. You failed at something. And it's because I don't want them to be rewarded for doing something that's easy for them. I want them to be rewarded for trying things that are hard for them. That's the goal.
This is amazing because as an entrepreneur, like I help organize to scale businesses and I've helped a bunch of capital raisers do it. And they come to me and they're frustrated. They feel like they're behind the 8 ball, that they have a revolving door of people, that they are drowning in operational chaos on the verge of losing their sanity. And they're like, I am doing it wrong. And I'm like, no, you're hitting a ceiling. You're just hitting a ceiling. Like when you've mastered it until this level and you're now a new beginner in the journey of life.
Yep.
So along your journey, what have been some of those ceilings you've hit?
I'm hitting them all the time. Like I'm actually in the middle of one right now. Okay, so this is actually a good place to say it. So I have been wanting to start a podcast for 2.5 years, almost 3 years now. I've had the idea. I've had the name of it. I've had like thoughts about what it would look like. I had the name I had picked out almost 3 years ago. 8 months ago, I finally went to go and like reserve the name at least. I was like, baby steps. I don't have to do the whole podcast in one day. I can take a step forward one at a time, right? Like that Chinese proverb is a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I go to get the name. It was available 3 years ago. 2 random dudes I don't know have taken the name. They bought all of the IP for it and they've started a podcast with the exact name. And I was like, well, that was a failure. So I'm going to be launching a podcast under a different name. And I've been working on it. I'm making more progress than I did with the first time I tried that. But that was definitely a ceiling because it's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard for me. The commitment of a podcast feels like a lot. I'm low consistency, so it's hard for me to do something consistent. And I know that that's like the recipe for success with podcasts. And so I'm hitting that ceiling right now. But listen, I hit ceilings all the time. And there's nothing more humbling than trying to parent children that you will realize like how much you're like, I don't know anything about anything, right? But you just keep doing it and you keep showing up and you really like quit when you stop trying. You fail when you stop trying. When you quit, you fail when you quit. And so when you quit, that's the problem. So you just have to keep going and you'll find ways that don't work, but you got to keep going until you find the way that does and then double down into that.
Oh my goodness. Well, first I will say I did the same thing. Forever, I wanted to start a podcast. And I just started the Rooted Founder in the last maybe 6-12 months. So, and I've been around podcasting, right? My dad was co-host of the Realistic Guys radio show for 20 years. I mean, I've been in the podcasting world. I've seen behind the scenes. I know how to do it. And I just didn't do it because like you, I was like, I don't know if I want to be on the content hamster reel. And I can tell you it's one of the best things that I've done. And it's so fun. It's so fun because you just get to meet people. Like we were saying, like, well, how did we meet sooner? To all of these events in real estate. So you'll meet so many amazing people. And I think if you're a learner, and most high achievers we're committed to growth. We're committed to learning. And if you want to make the podcast, like I want to dive deep on a topic, you get to do that with somebody else that's like a thought leader. And think of it like virtual coffee. And then when you go to do it, let me know and I'll give you some tips because grouping them helps too with consistency.
Okay, good. That's what I've been doing. So I've created all these episode guides. I have like all the like graphics and everything. I have the website and I have all that. And now I've been creating episode guides. Now I need to just like go and record them, which feels like a new level of scary, but I'm going to do it because I'm excited about it. I want to share this with the world. I've put a lot of thought and energy and effort into it. So I do want to share it. And I think it'll be hopefully helpful for one other person. It's just scary. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Do it tired, do it scared, do it injured, do it wounded, do it confused, just
Yes.
do it.
Exactly.
So I know that in my personal journey, the more I have achieved, I have sometimes attached my identity to my achievement.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, you've achieved a lot in your life as
Yeah.
well. How do you define and protect your personal identity beyond your achievements?
Oh my gosh, what these are great questions. I am definitely taking notes from you for when I have my podcast. Um, okay, so this is really hard. And it's really hard when you're in spaces that are male dominated and there's a lot of like talk about money because that inferiority creeps in, the imposter syndrome creeps in, and it's really hard to not try to like keep up with the Joneses. This will get you into trouble faster than anything else will. If you look at our net worth and income, I would bet a lot of money that we probably have the highest net worth and income of anybody in our entire neighborhood. And it's not because we can't afford to live somewhere different where incomes or net worth kind of matches ours more, but it's because I just don't want to. Like, I want my kids to be grounded in this life that we have. I want to always feel comfortable. And what I've learned is the more money you make, the less material items matter to you. So like when I first started making like a lot of money, I mean, like when I first had like our first 7-figure year, I remember thinking like, wow, I've like really made it. This is so much money. And at that time, I used to always buy a Chanel bag to celebrate closing a deal because it was a lot of work. And so I do two things, Chanel and I donate to a charity. Like that was my ritual, my thing. Now I have the same Chanel bag I carry every day. Like I have my bags, but I don't ever take them out. I have one bag that I use every day. And I love this bag. It is like the right shape, the right size, like all the things. It's black and gold. They've discontinued it. So I can't even rebuy it, but it is so beat up and damaged and it's been loved and used. And I've gotten all the life out of it, right? And now I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I need to replace my bag. And I'm like, what do I get? Because years ago, I stopped buying bags like that. I mean, every now and then I'll still buy one if I see it and I like it. I'm like, okay, I'll, get this. But I really don't prioritize that spending anymore because one, I think the quality of Chanel has decreased. So there's that. But two, it's a status symbol for me to try to like show people that I have the level of achievement or wealth that I have. But the more money you make, like the less you want to do that. You're actually like trying to stay more under the radar, like more like quiet luxury is a thing now. And so now I'm actually looking at replacing my bag with there's a company called, do you know like Strathberry?
No, tell me.
Okay, wait, I have to look it up so I give you the right name. Um, it is a company that does like so Meghan Markle wears their bags. They're like so beautiful. Um, but they make these like really awesome bags that are like $500, $700. Strathberry is the name. And they're really beautiful and they're luxurious and they're elegant and they serve the purpose that I need, which is to carry my stuff around when I'm going out places and they look nice. And so like now I'm like, oh, I'm going to switch to that because I want to put my money toward things that mean more. So now for me, my identity isn't tied, my achievement isn't tied to the things I have, which at one point it certainly was, or at least some amount of overlap. Now it's tied to, okay, if I don't spend $5,000 on a bag and I spend like 1,000 or 700, and that's still a lot on a bag. I recognize that. So I don't want to like overstep the privilege that's there, but like it's significantly less than I used to spend. So now if I spend, call it $1,000 on a bag, the other $4,000 I can put toward an experience to build memories with my kids. I can put it toward creating like a scholarship or donating to a charitable cause that I'm really interested in. And like when I do things like that have impact to people who wouldn't otherwise be in the position that I'm in, that matters more to me than any of the bags that I could ever collect or have or own. So it's just like, it's interesting because as you achieve more, I feel like the less your identity becomes attached to the things.
I've had a similar journey. When my first deal that did so well, I bought a convertible, and
Okay.
then I was like, wait, money doesn't define me. I'm actually really not attached to material things.
Yeah.
And now people are like, where'd you get your clothes? And I'm like, Amazon. Like I am so the opposite now.
So,
And I'm similar to you. I value memory so much
yeah.
more. After my mom died, she passed away in the end of 2019,
So
and at 59 years old. So
that's
when she passed so young, it made me really value making memories, having experiences, quality time, and really being present with the people that I care about.
yes.
And that was a significant shift for me because in order to be a high achiever, a lot of times you're an action taker, you're stubborn, you push through,
Yeah.
and you just get things done no matter what.
Yeah.
And no matter what ends up being at the sacrifice of your relationships and your dinner table
Yeah.
and these memories. And you wake up in your dream life and it doesn't feel like you thought it would. And so then you make these internal shifts.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So one of the journeys that I've had to personally go on is learning to listen to my intuition more
Mm.
and not override it in my pursuit of achievement. So I'm curious for you, like what internal signals tell you it's time to let go of an idea or project or when to push through?
Okay, so I still haven't figured out how to trust my
Mhm.
gut or my intuition yet. And so
Mhm.
that's something I work on a lot. But what I do instead, because I know this is an Achilles heel for me, I'm an external processor. So I have like I call them my board of advisors, but they're really just like my closest friend circle. Um, so I'll take whatever I'm like thinking, feeling good or bad or unsure or whatever it is. And I'll go to like my board of advisors, like all my best friends, and I'll say, like, hey, here's what's going on. What do I do? And then they're really good about holding a mirror up for me and or giving me advice like of things that they've done or what they think could work for me. And like the people that are like that I call my best friends are people that have achieved a lot on their own. They're invested in their own growth, their own mindset. People are like, oh, but you have like 8 best friends. And like a best friend is not a person, it's a tier of friendship. And so, like, I have this tier of friendship where I really rely and trust them. My family acts as a board of advisors for me too. And so, like, I really trust them to help me calibrate and like work through some of the confusion I have. But I also, have you done your Clifton Strengths before?
I have not.
Okay, you have to do this. It'll change your life. There's a woman by the name of Rosie Noel. She is on my board, right? And she's also my mindset coach. But we do a lot of work around Clifton Strengths. And so I've done my Clifton Strengths. I'm very orange, which means I'm like the influencing theme. There's 4 domains. There's like influencing, relationship building, strategy or strategic thinking, and executing. And so I'm like very orange. And so oranges like tend to move fast, which is true for me too. And so she's green though. So she's strategic thinking, which moves really slow. So she's like, okay, let's process and let's like go through all these things. And she'll help break it down in a way that makes sense for me. And that helps me when I'm number one competition. So when I'm like competing in an unhealthy way, she can help me recognize that and step back from it. So I don't know is the real answer of like how you listen to your own intuition. I haven't figured that out yet, but I've come up with a tool to help me knowing that that's a weak spot for me.
Yeah, it's been a journey and I haven't figured it out fully yet either. However, I have typically overridden my intuition and I've known that where I just like power through and I push through and I'm pretty stubborn and resilient and gritty. And then I have this side of me that your body feels, right? Like it's contracting. It's like, oh, I don't know. And so I've started tuning in a little bit more to that. But similar to you, I have like what I call my inner boardroom.
Yes.
And it's this group of people that know me, know my tendencies, know my weak spots, know my strengths, and help me integrate so I can make the best decision in the moment.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
So speaking of stubbornness, because I'm sure you're a little bit stubborn and also a
Yeah.
fast action taker. What ways has your stubbornness been challenged by others, and how did you respond?
Oh, my stubbornness gets challenged all the time because I am stubborn. But I've done a lot of mindset work around it with Rosie to, instead of immediately feeling sure about something that maybe I shouldn't be so sure about, I've learned to approach things more with a perspective of curiosity. So what I found really helped is, let's say you and I are in a disagreement, and it doesn't have to be about anything big, small, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But like, let's say you go, blue is the best color. And I'm like, Staci, I appreciate that, but it's actually orange. And you're like, no, it's blue. Like, trust me, I know this. Normally, like before I did any mindset work, I'd be like, no, it's just orange. I can't believe that she would think blue is the best color. Like, what a dummy, right? Like, and this is the inner dialogue I'm having. Now, if you were to come to me and say that, I'd go, is blue the best color? No, objectively, it's not. It's still orange. Like, I'd still feel like that, right? Because that's my strongly held belief or opinion. And then the way I would interact today is I would go, Staci, it's interesting you say that because I've always thought it to be orange. Why do you think blue is the best? And then you might say something like, oh, well, this is a color that invokes peacefulness. And in the psychology of colors, like it builds trust. And my eyes are blue and it was my mom's favorite color. And so this color has like a lot of meaning and importance. And I really strongly believe that it's the best one. And now I have a different understanding of why you think blue is the best color, right? So now, even though I still believe that orange is the best color, I've now given you room and space to have a different perspective that's equally as valid. Even if I don't agree with it, it's still a valid position to take. And what I found is by approaching things with curiosity, you learn more about the other person, you build better relationships, you either strengthen your own position or you start changing your position, right? So like now I might be like, yeah, on second thoughts, I think that blue could be the best color for some people. It's still not for me. Or I could be like, okay, that is objectively not true because we all know that orange does this and this and this and this. And I would give you more data and facts to try to pull you over to the orange side of life, right? So like, this is like a silly example, right? But it is approaching with curiosity that will allow you to either shift your perspective or make room for other perspectives, or it'll force you to strengthen your position regardless of what the argument or debate is.
This is brilliant. I love it so much because what you're describing is actually jumping in a psychological sandbox with somebody and entertaining an idea that isn't your own. And it's like we don't do that. Instead, we battle with each other and then we have gridlock and it stalls all momentum and forward progress and everything.
Absolutely.
And so I'm curious, when was the last time you've changed your mind?
Like this morning, probably. I change my mind all the time now. I'm somebody, so there's like the school of thought, and I'm someone that has strong opinions loosely held. So you can have strong opinions strongly held, loose opinions loosely held, or weak opinions loosely held, weak opinions. I don't think anyone has weak opinions that they strongly hold. Maybe sometimes, I don't know. But I'm someone that's strong opinions loosely held. So I have pretty solid opinions and ideas. Like I could give you an opinion on things I don't even know about, like right now, if you ask me, right? But the more important thing is that I hold them loosely. So I'm open to new information and new data to change that perspective. But yeah, I often change my mind. And a lot of it happens with the discourse of people that are smarter than me and that are willing to have conversations with me, especially if their opinion's different. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine just on Sunday night, and he's a well-known public figure. He's a celebrity, and he and I have like developed this like really authentic and great friendship. And he was telling me that someone is asking him to publicly endorse something, right? And he agrees with the endorsement, but he's not sure if he wants to publicly endorse it. And at first, when he said this to me a few weeks ago, I immediately had a visceral reaction. But then I thought about it more, and I was seeking to understand and get curious about why he feels like it's not in alignment. And the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, wait, I actually have a different opinion on this today, just like 2 weeks later about something this big. And so I had a strong opinion out of the gate. And now I've changed that opinion because I've gotten more data points that have given me more clarity about what might be a better option or a better alternative. So all this to say, like, I change my mind all the time. When there's better data available that points to something different, I'm willing to be wrong. I'm not afraid of being wrong. I'm wrong all the time.
It's beautiful. That's the value of a growth mindset is
Yes.
that you can change your mind
Yeah.
and evolve with new information and new insights.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
so in kind of wrapping this up, maybe 2 or 3 more questions, I am curious, if at the end of your life, you were done with everything that you wanted to achieve, and you can change your mind in the future,
Yeah.
but what would you most want to be known for?
I would want my daughters to be proud of what I've accomplished because, I sacrifice to do what I do. And a part of that sacrifice comes from their sacrifice too, right? Like when I'm at work, I'm not raising them. And when I'm raising them, I'm not at work. And so that's a big challenge. But I want my legacy for them to be that they're proud and that they recognize that the opportunity that women have in 10, 20, 50, 100 years is because of some small part or some small role that I played in that.
Speaking of family and achievement, how do you balance or integrate or harmonize your ambition with your home life?
I don't really well, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I mean, I have a whole village that helps me with my kids. I have a spouse that is very hands-on with our family life and doesn't shy away from building a life with me. He's truly a partner for me. Um, But the reality is I'm always sacrificing somewhere. Either I'm sacrificing time and energy and effort with my family to be working, or I'm sacrificing working to be with my kids. So I have a team for both that allows me to be absent from one or the other physically, and it allows the world to keep revolving. But I draw really, really strict boundaries with my kids. So what I mean is, like, between 5:30 and 7:30 p.m., if I'm at home, I don't answer my phone. I'm not scrolling on social media. I don't scroll on social media in front of my kids. I don't waste time. Like, I'm very present and very intentional with them. And I answer their questions, and I I must tell them at least 10 times a week that I can't believe that I am so lucky that I get to be their mom. Like, I tell them that every day because I don't want them to ever wonder when I'm like traveling and doing all these other things. I don't want them to ever wonder what the most important thing to me is. And so if you ask my kids, like, what's mommy's favorite thing to do? They will tell you without fail, spend time with Via and Vivana, cuddle with Via and Vivana, something around like being around them. Because I really enjoy my kids. They're not a nuisance. They're not an inconvenience. They are my entire world. They're everything that I've wanted in life. They're all the best parts of my husband and I. And I never want them to forget that, even when I'm no longer here.
That's beautiful. What would you define success to be?
I think success is when you have peace and you have happiness and you have people that love you that will celebrate your successes and also sit with you when you're in the rain and in the mud. Having people that will show up for you, that care about you, uh, having strong relationships with not just my parents, but also my in laws, my husband, my sister, my brother in laws, my kids, my nephews, like having my family and then my like close friendships intact, happy, everybody is thriving, everyone is doing well. Having my community around me, like, that feels like a big success to me. And just being able to see change that happens systemically. I think that's the epitome of success, is peace and happiness.
For you and your husband, because I think this is a challenge a lot of ambitious women
Yeah.
face, is really preserving that relationship and honoring that relationship
Yeah.
in the ambition, in the grind, in the pursuit. Do you and your husband have some rituals that you do to keep you aligned?
We don't, which is really crazy because he's very high consistency. I'm very low consistency. So I could never be the person to be like, we're going to do this thing every Tuesday and forever, never, and ever. This is how it's going to be. Cause like, I just won't do it. I already know that. He's more like that. Like he's a very like routine, disciplined individual, which is a big part of why I married him. So we don't have like rituals that are like consistent like that. But I think what we do have is respect. Like we have a lot of respect for each other, deep respect for each other. And I think that when you always have that, like we always come back to each other. Even when I'm like traveling or he's traveling, we always come back to each other and find each other. We're actually next week is our 12-year anniversary. So thank you. Yeah. So, and at one point I used to think like, wow, that's so long. And then I look at like my in-laws and my parents who have been married, like my parents have been married 40 years or 44 years this year. My in-laws have been married like 47 or 48 years. And I'm like, wow, that's a long time. That's actually success, is having the same partner or spouse through your whole entire life. Like that's hard to do. And it doesn't happen without intention and effort. And so, we respect each other. That's the thing that's consistent. We care about our kids a lot. That's consistent. Every Sunday, this isn't really something with like my husband as much, but every Sunday we go to lunch at my mother-in-law's house. So like my parents, his parents, our kids, us, we'll all be there. And then like if we have friends or family and they just come to the Sunday lunch, my mother-in-law is a great cook and she'll like cook this big spread for us. And like that's our day that we kind of regather as a family and regroup as a family.
That is so beautiful. It makes me miss my mom. She
Yeah.
was that kind of person that just brought everybody together. And I think that in a lot of ways, our pursuit of material things has divided families. And so I love that you guys still have that tradition of bringing yourselves together,
Yeah.
even when the world takes us apart sometimes.
100%. But you could be that person if your mom can't do it anymore.
Yes, you're right.
It could be a way she could like live on through you.
Yes, that's beautiful.
So
Yeah. That is legacy, right?
yeah.
It's not just passing on money, it's passing on memory making and mind
Yeah.
traditions and all of that. Yeah. I like that. So, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on all the social media platforms, Veena Jetti, VeenaJetti. I respond on Instagram the most. So if you want to actually connect with me, send me a message on Instagram. And if you want to learn more about investing in multifamily, if you want to passively invest, you can go to ViveFunds, VIVEFUNDS.com. Or if you want to learn how to do this, I have Mastering Multifamily with Veena Jetti. It's a free Facebook group where I do like a lot of education and I do a lot of free content there so that, I'm not creating barriers for people who don't have the resources to, join a community or be part of a program or anything like that. So I do a lot there too.
Yeah, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. So, when people come to connect with you, what are some of the projects that you're working on that they would be interested in connecting with you over?
Yeah. So if you want to invest in our deals, like we do pretty vanilla, boring multifamily deals. Like right now, I'm under contract on a deal that we are assuming a 2.59% interest rate on. Like it's an insane deal. But it's, the way to partner with me on that would be to be a passive investor. You have to be accredited in order to be part of that deal. But that's one way to connect if you're looking just to invest. If you're looking to collaborate or do something, like it has to be in alignment with what my goal is now. I have a lot of people that'll just send me like, oh, I have this 17 unit in Alabama. Are you interested in it? And I'm like, hi, I'm Veena Jetti. Who are you? Like, let's have a proper introduction first. And then also it's just not in my buy box. So I direct them like, hey, I have an awesome community that's doing deals. Go find the multi community and be involved there. And someone in there will buy it, even though it's not in my buy box. But yeah, I'm on a mission of impact. So if you have ways for us to make impact and create change together, I'm all ears and I'm interested in that.
Yes, we were talking before, and some of the things that you're impact-wise that you're passionate about are women and money.
Yes.
And
yes.
investing, and then just family and diversity, inclusion, all of that. So I have enjoyed this conversation a lot. I can't wait for your podcast to come out. And I'm excited to see your impact continue to grow and your mission and your crusade to continue to expand. So thank you for being on.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate you.
Yes. And to everyone listening, I hope that this encourages you to go make money, especially if you're a woman, and to remember that you can stay rooted in beliefs and principles in family and in tradition, even while you're ambitious and you're getting a lot of shit done, because we need to do both. So cheers, y'all.